answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Well, you know, I never rest when it comes to tracking down Kevin Sabet, he of Project Sam. He's unleashed a whole bunch of new stream of propaganda. This showed up in the Alaska Dispatch, and I felt it necessary to rebut some of these things. You can see most of these quotes on screen. I'll go into a little more detail on this. But, of course, if you want the full, detailed debunking in real time of Kevin Sabet and Project Sam, don't forget to visit smartapproaches.com. Smartapproaches.com, Smart Approaches on Twitter, Smart Approaches on Facebook, and, I've also got Not Kevin Sabet on Twitter. That's a fun one as well. So I've got a link in my blog at radicalruss.com if you want to find the actual full story here from the Alaska Dispatch. Since we only have a limited amount of time, I'm going to just give you the bit-by-bit lies, half-truths, misdirections, and obfuscations that I found, and the quick debunk to go with them. Here's the first lie. He actually, this is a quote from the Alaska Dispatch piece where he says, actually, drugs are not cheaper and more available than ever now. Drugs are not cheaper and more available. Well, here's the facts, people. In constant 1981 dollars, heroin is 81% cheaper, cocaine is 80% cheaper, meth is 57% cheaper, and heroin is 220% more pure, cocaine is 61% more pure, and methamphetamine is 39% more pure. Only marijuana has gotten more expensive. So, drugs are not cheaper? Yes, they are. All drugs are cheaper except pot. Here's the other fact. From 1991 to 2010, the 30-day prevalence of drugs among 12th graders was, for cocaine, it went from 1.4% of 12th graders to 1.3%. Woohoo! Amphetamines went from 3.2% to 3.3%. Not big deal, right? But marijuana went from 13.8% to 21.4%. So the only drugs that are being used more available than ever is marijuana. It's the only one that got more expensive and the only one that's getting used more. Here's another one of his lies. Actually, this one's a half-truth. Quote, one of the biggest myths is we are simply incarcerating otherwise innocent people who are using drugs. End quote. Well, here's the fact. 663,032 people were arrested for marijuana possession last year. Just possession. They don't all end up in prison, I'll admit that. Even though Kevin will admit that 0.7% of state inmates are in prison for possession only, that works out to 9,177 people. Now, these people do end up, these 663,032 people, do end up with mugshots that are searchable through Google for the rest of their life, and records that follow them for the rest of their life, and they do spend some time in booking and holding time in a cage. Now, Kevin will obfuscate that away by saying, well, many of these people pleaded down from serious offenses. You know, serious offenses like growing marijuana, or selling it to other adults who want it, or maybe having a probation violation, or maybe owning a gun legally, or maybe being a parent and endangering a minor by having them around houseplants, or maybe by forming a conspiracy, or maybe by obstructing justice. There's a whole lot of really serious offenses you can get popped for just for possessing marijuana. Here's another one of his lies. Quote, states with formal decriminalization laws have basically shown that there is no distinction in terms of police activity, arrests, and jail. Fact! California's passage of decrim in 2010 led to an 86% decrease in marijuana arrests. Here's one of his misdirections. We know that use in those states is far greater than it was at the times when they didn't have medical marijuana dispensaries. Now, he's referring to California and Colorado. They got their dispensaries mid-2000s and things went haywire, right? Well, here's the fact. Comparing 2002 and 2003, this is from National Survey of Drug Use and Health, before dispensaries, 2002, 2003, and then compare it to 2010, 2011, after dispensaries, we find that California's 30-day use went up from 6.8 to 8.6%. And Colorado's went up from 8.8 to 11.1%. So yes, he's absolutely right. Use did go up amongst the 30-day users. But what he won't tell you is that lifetime use, that is, people who have ever tried marijuana, has increased in California from 57.7 to 58.6, and in Colorado from 47.7 to 48.0. So what this means is the number of people who have ever tried marijuana has gone down, but the people who have tried it have more access, and now they can get it more often. That's all that's happened. We don't have more pot smokers. We have fewer pot smokers now. Just the pot smokers who used to be annual smokers can now get it more often, and they become monthly smokers. That's all that's going on here. All right, here's another one of the half-truths. Quote, we also know that peer-reviewed studies show that states with medical marijuana laws have higher rates of marijuana use and addiction among kids than states without medical marijuana laws. End quote. Yes, here's the fact. We also know these states had higher rates of marijuana use before they had medical marijuana laws as well. And that passage of these laws did not make a difference in their rates of use. It's not that medical marijuana makes more people smoke pot. It's that people who smoke pot are more likely to vote for medical marijuana. Here's one of his lies. Quote, we drink more, we gamble more, we snort cocaine more, and yes, we smoke marijuana more. And he uses this one whenever someone brings up the Netherlands. Oh, we can't compare the Netherlands. We're completely different. We drink more, we gamble more, we smoke more cocaine, more marijuana. Well, here's your facts. We are 43rd in world consumption of alcohol. Germany laughs at us. We are 43rd. And most of Europe is way ahead of us in alcohol consumption. Australia leads the world in gambling losses at $1,300 per adult resident. Singapore is number 2 at $1,150. The U.S. barely breaks 5th with less than $400 gambling losses per resident per year. Spain kicks our ass in cocaine consumption at 1.8% of their residents versus our 1.5%. But I will grant you we do consume the most cocaine overall, 36.8% of the world's supply. But Brazil is closing in with 18.8%. Oh, and marijuana use? Sorry to say, folks, we're 12th in per capita marijuana use in the world, trailing countries like Italy, New Zealand, and the Czech Republic. Here's a lie. Quote, there were always far fewer users in the Netherlands than in the U.S. in terms of kids. Now they've caught up to us. End quote. Fact. According to the Netherlands National Drug Monitor, quote, the percentage of current cannabis users among mainstream secondary school students aged 12 to 18 declined gradually between 1996 and 2003 and remained stable from 2007 to 2011. In 2011, 8% of this group were current cannabis users, end quote. In the U.S., 9.8%. Haven't caught up to us. Here's another lie. Quote, the Netherlands is completely reversing their policies and they're closing shops down, end quote. Fact. Completely reversing would be no longer tolerating personal possession of cannabis and making it a criminal offense. The Dutch most certainly are not doing that. Now, some border towns have closed some coffee shops because they got problems with tourists. And that's just an indictment of other European countries being intolerant, not the Dutch being tolerant. Another lie, international flavor, quote, Portugal, in many ways, is a treatment model similar to the U.S. in many states, end quote. Fact. In Portugal, possession of 10 days personal supply of any drug is not a crime. Name one U.S. state where that is the case, where you can have 10 days supply of meth and you don't get arrested. 10 days supply of coke, meth, heroin, ecstasy, GHB, LSD, MDMA, psilocybin mushrooms, anabolic steroids, and pot. You could have them all. 10 days supply of the whole cornucopia. Nobody's going to slap a pair of handcuffs on you. Now, if you can tell me the U.S. state where that's the model, I'd love to hear it. Let's see. Here's another lie. Oh, this one's a misdirection. Here, I love this one. This is with respect to, the war on drugs isn't working. And this is Kevin Sabet's way of saying, well, yes, it is. 52% of Americans drink regularly. Even with every single anti-smoking campaign you could ever conjure up, 27% of Americans still smoke cigarettes. 7% of Americans have used marijuana in the past month. See, the idea here is, those drugs are legal and lots of people use those. And this one's illegal and so few people use those. It's like comparing apples and oranges. 2 legal drugs with an illegal one. 2 drugs that are highly addictive with 1 drug that is not. 2 drugs that are incredibly toxic with 1 drug that is not. Here's some facts for you. First of all, if you want a comparison as to what's going to work or what's not going to work, you wouldn't compare legal alcohol to illegal marijuana. You'd compare legal alcohol to illegal alcohol to see what's working. And we all know how well that last experiment turned out. Second of all, this drink responsibly and these anti-smoking truth campaigns we've had over the years have lowered the drinking stat from 60% who used to drink. Back when I was in high school, 60% of people drank. Now it's 52%. Back when I was in high school, 37% of people smoked tobacco. Now it's 27%. So, did we make those illegal? Did we arrest anyone? Did we force people to have to go to rehab? No. And yet they went down. 2 legal drugs, and their use went down. And for the use of marijuana, when I was in high school, 14% of U.S. adults were using marijuana. Now it's down to 7%. We've cut it in half, but it's illegal. So let's see. Drinking and smoking went down, and they're legal. Marijuana went down, and it's illegal. So what? It tells us nothing. If we actually had legal marijuana, we could have public service campaigns. We could have educational campaigns. We could card kids, and the use might go down. And third, here's the biggest thing. This assumes that marijuana use going up is a bad thing. Hey, if people are trading pot for beer, people are trading pot for OxyContin, if they're using marijuana instead of more harmful drugs, wouldn't this be an overall good thing? Here's another one I like. This is one of my favorites. I love this line. Alcohol and marijuana, in fact, are usually used together. Visit any underutilized bar at a cannabis cup to disprove this one. And I love this one. Alcohol has a long history of widespread accepted use in our culture, and widespread marijuana use does not have that. Oh, so you're admitting that widespread cultural acceptance of a drug is all that's necessary for us to ignore all of its harms. So when we do have widespread cultural acceptance of marijuana, then it'll be okay. So how widespread does it got to be? We already have more tokers than Texans in this country. There are more people that smoke pot this year than the population of Texas. Is that enough culture? How about 40 years since the 1960s of an active cannabis culture? Or should we go back to the 1920s with Cab Calloway in the culture? Or should we go back to the 1840s with Dr. O'Shaughnessy in medical culture? Or should we go back to 1611 and the first hemp plantations on this continent 402 years ago? Is that enough culture? Oh, I got all ranty. Hey, we're gonna take hour 2 here. All sorts of fun. Brian's here from Outpost. We're gonna talk music, play some acoustic grooves, and have some fun. For Brian the Red, Brian from Outpost, Bacon Dan, 2 folks I don't remember, and myself. I'm Radical Russ. Till next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.